Hi, I am Michael Allison, the developer of the Play Zone, and I wanted to share a recent dialogue I had with a mental performance coach named Jana Dean, who is also becoming polyvagal informed herself. And she is also a hypnotherapist. And most importantly, she's a mom of a Division I softball player as well. So very experienced in this world of performance and athletics. And we have a conversation about a particular athlete she's working with who is a gymnast who was injured in a fall because her coach didn't catch her. And now she's kind of trying to get back into her sport, and she's struggling, of course. And this conversation is fascinating, actually, when we really look at what she's struggling with from the lens of polyvagal theory. And then we get a little more into some other things related to performance, injury. And anyway, I hope you enjoy it, because I sure enjoyed having this dialogue with Jana.
Right now there's a gymnast that I have in mind that I'm going to start meeting with, and she had a pretty severe back injury. She hyperextended her back, and she's 17 years old, level 10 in gymnastics, which I guess is pretty high. Was looking at some college recruiting, things like that. So then all of a sudden this injury back in the summertime. And so now she's been going, through the healing process, and she's getting ready to have to make the decision whether or not she wants to re-enter into, like, go back and find there's some other emotional, traumas that have happened along the way too with this team. So she's trying to decide if that's the right fit. So she's really having kind of a difficult time if she even wants to continue to do this, but it's been her passion her whole life, this huge lifelong dedication to it. And as the family unit as well. She's got a wonderful mother who is also a mental performance coach.
So, great.
So they're trying to kind of figure out where she can stand on her own 2 feet and make these choices for herself. And so this came up, and I told her I would check it out and see what we could come up with, if there's something that could assist that. So, because I think there's quite a bit of fear, and trust issues around, like, she didn't get caught by the coach. The coach didn't catch her when she was coming off, and then that injury occurred. So I think there's some big stuff here.
Absolutely.
That we can look into.
So let's kind of go into a little more detail. So the coach didn't catch her, and now she's considering going back to that same team with the same coach.
No,
it's a different team. Okay. So she's left that team. She's going back to a different team, different coach, but there's still a lot of fear. Is the fear that she's shared with you, is it fear around not being caught when needed, or is it fear around her own body not being able to perform, or that the pain is still there?
My sense is, and I can't say because I haven't talked to her directly, my sense would be more it's the trust. It's this trust piece of not being caught, or
and that kind of goes a little bit deeper too, right? Not being actually safe in the arms of my coach.
Yes.
Right, which is at the heart of polyvagal theory.
Right.
And that's what we're all on, that quest and that shared journey to feel safe, to feel safe in our body, to feel safe on our stage, in her case, on the floor.
Right.
And ultimately, though, to feel safe with another, to feel as though we can trust that they have our back, and that we belong on that team. And so that's really what it sounds like is at the heart of what she's feeling.
You're right.
Right. Well, do I feel safe with another? And do I feel as though I am part of this team? Do I belong here? Do I belong?
I think you nailed it. I think that's from what she shared with me, because there was these emotional components that went with it too, where there was a little bit of a I don't know if ostracizing, I don't think that's the right word, but a shutdown on the support that she got. Like, the whole team kind of shut down on her. The coaches, there wasn't a lot of checking in and support in the injury. Kind of like, once you're done, you're injured, we're moving on to the next. When they had dedicated their whole entire world, and this was their family.
Right. So
Yeah.
she felt a little bit betrayed. She
Mm-hmm.
also felt that one would think that it would be natural then to also think that, well, obviously I have to be performing at a certain level or I'm not even part of this team.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately that might be true.
Yeah.
Right. And it seemed and it played out that way. So you
Mm-hmm.
could see how now she feels like complete violation of expectancy. She
Yeah.
expected to be supported. She felt maybe going into that before that injury that she really did belong there,
Yeah.
right?
And it was a
Maybe she
family.
really felt it was a family. She felt like it was
Mm-hmm.
a family, and then boom, coach doesn't catch me. Now I'm injured. Wasn't even my fault,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm injured and I'm left. I'm left alone, and they
Yeah.
keep moving on, and I'm left alone.
Yeah.
That's a big deal to a body, to a
Huge.
subconscious nervous system, right? So that's what she's facing.
Yes.
That is huge. And so, well, first it would be really helpful for her to understand that,
Mm-hmm.
right? For her to sort of talk through that and to really get a felt sense of, yeah, I feel like I was betrayed and I was left on my own. And understand that we all need to feel like we won't be left alone, that we
Mm-hmm.
won't end up on all by ourselves, right? And that no matter what, we actually are good enough to be cared for, to be seen, to be heard, to be included, and
Yeah.
to ultimately be loved. And that's what's shattered for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
That grief is like a grieving process, right? I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so she has to, at some point, it's just like treating trauma. We have to gradually sort of titrate her back into trusting that she won't be left alone the next time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that she can now be authentically open and accessible and not be cast aside when she's
Yeah.
not good enough, because there will be times where she will be injured again in life, or she won't perform to the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, the ultimate goal is to become okay with that in yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
part of that is to know in your body, not just in your mind, but to know in your body that actually you do have a family. You do
Mm-hmm.
have a support group that isn't going to leave your side. And
Yes.
and in this case, maybe it isn't the team. Maybe that is too much to ask of a highly competitive gymnastic team, unfortunately. Maybe that isn't the culture of the team.
Yeah. There's
But
family, you mean? Mm-hmm.
right, yeah, maybe that isn't. Maybe they are unfortunately being led down a
Yeah.
different path where it is competition, evaluation, and we're going to fight and compete amongst each other and we're going to bond, but we're really doing it just to become the best. And that might be the culture,
That could be.
but
You could be
it
right.
could be. But then there's still her own support team.
Mm-hmm.
She has you, she has her mother. Sounds like
Mm-hmm.
she has a great relationship there. So
She does.
if that is the case, right? Like if that team and that culture of that team is that way, and she can't find a team that has a different culture that actually is family, that actually
Mm-hmm.
does pick you up when you fall, then she has to build that team around herself,
I like that.
right? She has to build that's what I call that container of safety. She has to build it around herself. And that can
Gave
be,
me the chills. That gave me the chills.
yeah,
That's a good,
that
yeah.
can be
I think
you,
it's
that
so
can be her
true.
mom. That's where it
Yeah.
starts. And then it can
Yeah.
be all the things, and then it can be all the internal resources that she needs to build. How is
Mm-hmm.
she managing how her own fear, when she steps out there and her heart starts racing, what is she going to do to help herself calm down? When her breathing gets out of control, what can she do? And little by little, start regaining trust in herself and trust in you and trust in her mom and trust and gradually build that container of safety around herself,
Mm-hmm.
with or
Mm-hmm.
without the team culture supporting that. And
Yeah.
that
hopefully will ripple into the team culture
Mhm.
to be
Mhm.
the ultimate goal, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then it's just, it's like, if we can get to a place where we as the athletes out there competing, if we can get to that place where we feel safe enough to literally give it everything we have and to come up short
Mhm.
and to trust that I'm still going to be part of the team,
Yes.
then we're free, right? Then we're free. But until we get to that place, we're always playing with a little bit of guard. There's
Yeah.
always a little bit of fear and a little bit of hesitation. There's a
Mhm.
little bit of doubt, and it's not grounded in pure safety and
Yeah.
trust, right? And it's a progression. It's not like we can just go there and think that's how I want to be. We have to help the body get there. We have to do it through experience. We have to do it through relationships with others. We have to do it through those different resources that we keep building. And little by little, that's the quest, though, is to actually get to that place where, and that's what I call the breakthrough moment. That's where you get to that place where you feel in your body, you can fail. You can fail miserably,
Mhm.
but you will still be safe. You will still be included. You will still be with those who care about you.
Mhm. I
And then
love
you're
that.
free. Then you're
Yes.
free.
Yes. I love that so much. That reminds me of another player that we can talk about in a minute or two,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just remind me to come back to that on that
Okay.
note,
Yep.
because I think that is really good. I want to go back for a second, because we were talking about that she won't be left alone. That was that. And I love that you brought that up, because one of the things when I was talking with her mom is, curious of what is the story that's getting attached to this, and being able
Right.
to kind of put that
Yeah.
under spotlight it and say, okay, what is it that I'm feeling? And is this a story that's going to, because the feelings are real, they're there. And obviously somebody doesn't want to have that feeling of being left alone, but then being able to take it and reframe it eventually after like feeling all the feelings. I think it's so important to go through. And it sounds like
Yeah.
she has. There was a lot
Yeah.
of tears, a lot of upset.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like she somewhat regrouped on her own, like kind of like, okay, I'm done with that. And I'm moving on now. And yet I'm always curious, is that another, like, is that the body's
Yeah.
way of
Could
protecting of
be.
like, I don't really want to think about this anymore. Let's
Yeah.
just move on.
Yeah.
So
It really
there's
could
that
be.
balance in
Yeah.
there of trying to figure
Right.
out.
Yeah, it really could be her just sort of masking that now, or repressing that, or just kind of pretending it's not still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can learn that through your relationship with her,
Yeah.
right?
And when
In
it's,
time. What's that?
no, I always think there's such an opportunity when it's something's fresh like this,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
then it doesn't
That's
have
right.
to embed deeply into the subconscious and
You
keep
got it.
playing.
Right.
Unless,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
that
you
if you,
brought up a really good thing, is that what happens is, so you have this bodily feeling, right? Like in her case, she was injured. That had a bodily feeling,
yes.
a very uncomfortable, probably painful bodily
Yeah,
feeling.
for sure.
And then that progressed into being left alone, which had
Mhm.
another bodily feeling. Again, that was probably pretty uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
And a different bodily feeling than the pain, but maybe very similar. And now she's associating that to some story, is what
Mhm.
you're getting at. Like, so I have
Yeah.
this bodily feeling, I have this reaction to being left alone, to be sort of cast aside, as anyone would, because we're wired to need to be together,
Mhm.
absolutely, and to feel supported and connected. And so now I have this bodily feeling, and now do I attach a story other than, yes, I am hurt because I'm left alone. That's
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Versus, oh, I'm actually not good enough, or I should be a different way, right? And then they'd include me again, right? That's
Mhm.
what you're getting at. Like, from my perspective, it's perfectly fine to have the story of, yes, my body is really uncomfortable. I
Mhm.
feel really, really sad because I was left alone.
Mhm.
I wasn't actually helped and supported. Okay.
Yeah.
but not attaching a second story to, well, that's because I'm not good enough, or because I should have actually sucked it up and kept competing, or I didn't try hard enough to make friends who would support me. Like, it's that second story, that second association, the way I'm framing it. And if that isn't there, and it's just, yeah, look, that hurt, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Different, right?
Well, then I was also thinking about the story around, is this what it always was? And I just didn't see it. You know, was it like this the whole time? And then I just kind of put, like, you know, so then it's this, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Am I
what
not?
am I
And
missing?
then it's this self-trust of, wait, they've been like this the whole time, and I just put my blind, you know. So I'm curious around all of it. We'll see what comes up.
That's really good. Right. And so whatever you get to, right, whatever that is, if you can help her to not feel the guilt or the shame or the blame for not detecting that, right, for not seeing what was there, right?
Yeah.
Just to, I really emphasize that the stories that we make up are really that. They're made up to make sense of how the body is feeling, how the body is reacting reflexively, adaptively. And so then we make up these stories to make sense of what is going on in the body. And then what can happen too, which is that association piece, is then we can, in anticipation of another similar event or another similar interaction, we get ahead of ourselves and we remember that, and then we have an association, which then feeds back into that bodily feeling before we ever even get into that situation. And it sort of primes us to relive that experience. That's where interrupting the thought and the association come into play, right?
Yes.
But it often starts with the bodily feeling. In her case, she was injured, then she was left alone, and she had these bodily feelings, which then she attaches a narrative to. And that's what you want to uncover it at some point. What are there any other narratives that are still getting in the way of her just coming back into safety, coming back into an ability to trust again? And just put it in the bodily feeling, and oh, that was a bodily feeling, of course. And oh, that's that story. Oh, and then I attach this, right? And so then you can start peeling away the stories and just experiencing the bodily feelings for what they are.
I think so too. I like how you say, of course. I mean, I feel like that. No, I mean it. I feel like that makes, because for a lot of people, it's like, that's permission. Of course. Like, it makes sense. You know, like it wouldn't be any other way. So it kind of, to me, that I felt a lightness in my body when you're like, of course, that makes perfect sense. You know, like being like that. Yeah. And then I like this idea too of almost like creating a framework around injury. So like, you know, tapping into that bodily feeling, and then also tapping into what is the story that's being attached to it, and really digging into that. And then does that story match up with what we want the outcome to be? You know, like, so say if she does want to move forward, or just even in the healing journey. And I don't know if that's too much, I don't know how that gets presented, or if it's too much to ask.
Yeah,
but
it's down the road. I think it's down the road, but it's is the story, one, is the story absolutely true? Do you know it's factually true? And chances are it's not, right? Is it absolutely factually true? Probably not. And does the story change when you're in different states, right? When you're happy and all that, is it a different story? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, that's good information too, right? So so it's like, and is there a different story that might also be true that would be more helpful?
Yeah.
Right. You know, for me personally, the simpler the story, the better, right? So it just goes into like, man, I am really, really walking onto this gymnastic floor right now. I am like really mobilized. Like, man, my heart is really beating. I wonder what that's about. Right. That, like, just note. So my story is just noticing how much mobilized or immobilized or what is going on in the body. And then I just sort of name it. Oh, well, that's just me going into my sort of flight zone or
Yeah.
my fight zone. Oh, interesting. Let's kind of see what happens. And then at that point, I'll go, okay, well, what is this really useful right now? Or can I contain this in a little bit better way, right? So what resources do I have right now that are available that I could help contain some of that highly mobilized energy, right? And so I can play with it a little bit. Or if I'm really shutting down or detaching, well, how can I get a little connection or a little energy or a little grounding or a little interaction to come out of that, right?
Yeah.
Instead of even getting into the story.
Big step.
At some point, you absolutely, I think, for in my own experience, at some point the story, the real story, the really deep kernel eventually comes out, but there might be all of these other layers of the onion on the way there, right? But eventually it does, but you can't rush that. Is my perspective. It's like that eventually comes. So when I went to give this talk, this presentation a couple of weeks ago, I was really struggling to sleep that night, and I had to do a pre-check, meaning I had to stand up on the stage like it was going to be. All the chairs were empty, all these bright lights, all these moving pieces, and I got mobilized. And that's what I do. Wow, I'm really mobilized. Holy cow. Heart's racing, breathing's different. Body was actually starting to twitch. I'm like, wow, fascinating. Huh. And then I have, oh, can I pull this off? Oh, just come back into the body. Okay, boom, boom, boom. So then when I go to bed, I'm lying there and I kind of have these waves of different mobilized energy coming through. And I did a pretty good job of just not attaching to any of them. But eventually, I got to the kernel. And the kernel for me was an experience of being a baseball pitcher. And I was a really good pitcher. And my dad was not what her mom was, what her mom is. My dad, it was never good enough. Didn't matter what it was. And so I got to an experience, boom, there it is. Holy cow. Ha. So I eventually got there, right? But I do this all the time. And you know, it's what I do. And I've had a lot of years of getting to different kernels, getting to different stories that I've held on to. And that was one of them. So, but I don't think you can go there. Like, I think you have
immediately.
To slowly, and I think you need to slowly go there. And you also want to help build resources before going there, right? Like that could have set me off in another whole trajectory, but it didn't. It was a really, but I'm fairly resourced.
Yes.
So that would be the only thing about kind of digging. My approach, and it's just my approach, is I tend to build resources and build what you'll learn in the course more about a habit of safety. Just really knowing where to find what's safe and reassuring to me at any moment. And building that and really solidifying that to where even if I get really disrupted, I can find some grounding, which is what you need sometimes when you uncover those deep stories that you've held on to.
Yes. That makes perfect sense. I love it. I think that's really helpful.
Cool.
Sure. I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see where you go with it and what happens. So I would really like if you keep me in the loop.
Oh, I for sure will. And I'm
awesome.
just even thinking of all of this I'm thinking of, athletes that I've worked with past injuries that, and that's a question that I had when I was we were getting ready to meet. I'm just curious on, so is there anything that we can do with that polyvagal theory to help? I think I kind of know the answer, but to prevent injury, because I know stress, right? Stress is huge when we're tensing and tightening up. But if we were practicing that all the time, I wonder what the data is on that. If it's like less, or is it, less risk for injury, or I'm just curious around that.
Yeah. Well, so here's how I look at it, right? So a lot of athletes, a lot of competitors, a lot of business executives, a lot of people who are, quote, successful in whatever their game of life is, they spend a lot of time locked in a mobilized threat physiology. Right? So they're highly mobilized. They're setting goals, constantly working toward those goals. A lot of times it's tunnel vision. Outside of that goal, their life is out of balance, and they're focused in on that goal, and they get very successful at that. The problem with that is that they're not actually recovering. So we're only actually going back into homeostasis, which means our physiology that's being autonomically regulated, right, beneath conscious awareness, to support our health, our recovery, our restoration, our growth of new tissue, our growth of new pathways, right? All of that is only happening when we actually come into a sense of ease and stillness and calm and let the guard down in the body, right? And so for those who are locked into that highly driven sympathetic drive, right, always moving, even if it's not unsafe, even if it's like just constant play, at some point, most of it's not constant play. Most of it's grounded in some fear of not having enough or not being enough. And if I get this, then I'll have enough to be safe enough to belong, right? So it's still that same storyline. But even if it were all play, we still have to come back into full recovery, homeostasis, and spend enough time. So if we're not, then we're certainly going to keep breaking down tissue, and we're changing how we're actually metabolically creating energy. We're actually changing the mitochondria, how the mitochondria are actually functioning. So all the way down to the simplest parts of our physiology, and then all the way out through our behaviors and our relationships, we see the same thing. And so at some point, the body will break down, which will be an injury, which will be a sickness, which will be a lack of any desire to play the game anymore. It's just too much, right? And so we will see it. So that's the long term. So yes, over time, if we don't help our athletes really know how to find and feel and sit in safety, in comfort, in ease, in connection, at some point they're going to break down. Right. And then in the actual moment of while they're doing their activity, we also would know that they're creating more muscle tension, higher metabolic output. They're breathing, and all of those other heart rate variability is shrunk, heart rate's higher, blood pressure is higher. So they're having all of these other bodily attributes that are not optimizing elasticity in the tissue. Right? Like part of an injury is that you exceed your ability, the elasticity of the tissue, and it's like plastic, and it should be elastic, but you exceed it. And so we're actually hindering some of that elasticity the higher mobilized we get, when it's not grounded in some sense of calm, some sense of control. So I think in the short term, losing control, meaning losing vagal control and becoming fully sympathetic, absolutely is higher risk. And then over the long term, if we don't know how to come back to homeostasis in our body, we're never fully recovering. And so we just keep chipping away until eventually, boom, we have an injury, and we don't actually go back to the root of what's really beneath the injury. Well, the root of the injury is a lifetime or a career or a season of being locked in a mobilized threat physiology. That's really the cause. And so then we just keep fixing the injury, but we're not actually getting to what's at the root of it. And that's when you'll start seeing injury leading to injury, leading to injury, leading to injury, leading to quitting.
Yes. And do you feel like that is the body's way of trying to take care of you? To say like, this is too much?
It could be. I mean, it absolutely, it's certainly the body that has no more resource. And
Okay.
at that point, it's going to do what it can to preserve and conserve what's left. So in that, yes, in that way of looking at it, yes, it's holding on to what's left, and you can't keep expending anymore because it won't have anything left.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it is the way to keep you alive, for sure. Yeah.
Then can you speak to when you said full recovery? So like, they're expending all of this, these athletes are expending all this. What would be, is it different for everybody what full recovery looks like? And how, I mean, I'm looking at how long do we need full recovery in order to like replenish the body? Is it different for everyone?
Yeah, and it depends on the output and the type of activity you're doing, right?
Okay.
Like cycling would be far less damaging to the muscle tissue itself than running, right? Right. So it would depend on all of those factors. So there isn't, I don't think there's like a universal do this. But
so many minutes a day.
yeah, but in my own experience and with a variety of different people, most of us are not spending enough duration in that, right? And or we think we are by doing like a video game. Like a lot of high level athletes are really into these video games, and they're sitting still, but they're not recovering. They're like they're in a threat physiology most of the time in the video games too, because there's a lot going on and they're competing. They so compete. They get locked into this high level of competition, and everything is a competition, right? So eventually it'll break down. So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's really been documented, but I tend to personally add more of that no matter what. Let's add more of that, right? And especially when they're traveling and all, and there's so many, right? So anything that's unfamiliar is it from the nervous system, from the subconscious body's perspective is dangerous. It's risky, right? Anything that's unpredictable, anything that's unfamiliar, anything that doesn't meet your expectations, anything that is really dynamically changing and uncertain. Going into different hotel rooms, having different background sounds. That's why home field advantage is really why it's important.
It's true.
It's because it's familiar, so you can already be calmer, be less on guard, and then you have your own fans. So now you're engaging with your fans, right? So you have that's what home field advantage is, and you didn't have to change time zones, so you can sleep on your same schedule and all that. But from the nervous system standpoint, this is home. This is all familiar. And I get to see my fans who are cheering for me. That's why you see such a discrepancy between win-loss, home field versus away.
I would think that the mental imagery would be super powerful.
Sure.
Right? Because the nervous, you're programming the brain as if it's already been there.
Sure. Yeah, and once you get the image going, get the feeling. Take it to the feeling. Take it to how that's changing your breathing, how that's changing your muscle tension, how it's opening your posture. Take it to the feeling.
Yeah. Right. Some good stuff.
Yeah.
I have been, just since I've been learning all about this, I've been noticing for myself where I think I'm mobilized in the aggressive state without meaning to be, but like my actions are really quick. I'm like, I'll go over to my mom and dad's for coffee in the morning and I'm almost like sprinting. Like I'm like, where it's a race to the coffee might be, but it's this intense. And even just walking around my house and I started paying attention, I'm like, oh, or like like if I'm sitting on the couch, my foot might be a little bit flexed. So I started to kind of bring that breath.
Totally good awareness.
And so I'm thinking like, if we could, wouldn't it be cool? Like if that's the awareness that it just becomes normal, like this part, it's like not even a time, like how much time, like that was my first question. How much time do we need? What if it was just noticing and
you got it. You got it. That's it. That's exactly it. And so it becomes an ongoing.
Yes. It's not a thing
what you would call mindfulness. It becomes an ongoing level of awareness that you're continuing in the background, sometimes in the foreground. You're going, is my body in the physiology that is optimal for this environment, this situation, my goals, my values, how I want to relate with this person, right? Do I want to relate to do I want to come running in there and get them all wigged up, or do I want to meet them where they are, right? And so you got it. That's the ultimate, that is the ultimate journey. And that is a process. But then it's not even like you sit down and I'm doing this practice, which is how we tend to do it, right? I'm going to do this practice. I'm going to check this off, and then I'm going to go back to how I've been.
Yes.
So how good was that practice? And what you're saying is what you're really trying to do is make your life the practice.
Yes.
Awesome. Exactly. And that, if we can share that, if we can get that to our athletes,
that's what I think.
That will change everything.
I really do. I really feel that strongly.
Absolutely.
So helpful.
Well, it can. It can.
Yeah.